So maybe the problem isn't that you're single this Valentine's Day. Maybe the problem is that we've been offered substitutes for connection, and our hearts are tired of pretending they're enough. Because being seen online isn't the same as being known, and swipes don't satisfy a soul that was designed for presence. If Valentine's Day is stirring something in you, longing, resistance, hope, or even numbness, stay with me. This episode isn't about pressure, it's about reclaiming something real. Hi, friends. Welcome to Taking Back Happy. I'm your host, Gina Granville. God's girl, retired homeschool mom of 4, empty nester, GG, essential oil and exercise enthusiast, Christian life coach, and someone who is taking back her own happy. I know many of you feel exactly like me in these midlife years, a sort of loss of direction, but you feel way too young and vibrant to sit on the porch and just watch life go by. What if you could reclaim your life, finding deep joy, renewed passion and purpose, and plenty of adventure in these midlife years? If you are ready to find your spark again, throw on those walking shoes, pop in those earbuds, and join me right here as we take back happy together. Hey, Taking Back Happy friends, have I got a treat for you. I am going to be hosting another Taking Back Happy workshop. So this is going to be 4 Mondays in a row. It's going to start on February 16th, and we'll do it at 7 p.m. Central Time. The first topic is Who Am I Now? The second one is Rewrite Your Story. The third one is What if there's no wrong answer? And the fourth one is It's more than a motto. It is a decision. So if you've been wanting to come in and join me and, take back your happy, this is a great way to do it. The workshop will be live on Zoom. It's $34.97 for the 4-week workshop. And it also is going to have replays available if you have to miss 1 week. But it'll be really fun if you're there in person because we'll get a lot more interaction going. So I hope you can join me for that. Today's podcast is for my single friends. All the single ladies. Okay, I will spare you my singing. So as it gets closer and closer to Valentine's Day, I sometimes get a little bit more like ick feeling. Is it just me? It's probably just me. But so I wanted to talk about that today. I want to get real with you and talk a little bit about that. So let's look at some different things about the holiday. Let's start with Valentine's Day without the filter. So we know everywhere we look right now, right? We acknowledge that this is the season of love. There's hearts and there's flowers and there's commercials and there's Hallmark movies and there's the perfect love stories. And, sometimes being single at Valentine's Day can feel lonely or awkward or even kind of annoying, actually. So we want to normalize the feeling that, nothing is wrong here. We're not missing out. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. If this season feels a little bit complicated, then okay, it feels a little bit complicated, but we don't have to make that mean something. Something that's kind of interesting that's happening right now is people really are craving real again. Ecclesiastes 3 talks about a time and a season for everything. And when we think about it, Valentine's Day doesn't get to define our worth or even the season of life that we are in. So let's look at the shift. Why are people tired of apps and like surface level connection? It's almost fatiguing, right? It's almost like, oh, I am so tired of this. Like that swiping culture and the ghosting and just real performative conversations, feeling seen but not really known. All those things that come with online dating and meeting people online. I'm on TikTok and every day, someone's coming up in my DMs and they're saying something. But I'm thinking to myself, like, what would it really take for me to respond to someone? Sometimes I do go through and read a few of them, but then I have this feeling like, I don't really know who's on the other side of that screen. I don't really know if what they're saying is true. I don't really know. Like, you just have that feeling of like, I don't know, just really superficial. If anyone knows me, they know I am a diehard romantic. I love Hallmark movies. I love the idea of happy endings. I just love all that. I mean, that's just who I am. But I feel like people want even more than romance. They really want connection. They want authentic connection. God kind of wired us that way. He wired us for that face to face, heart to heart relationships. In Genesis 2:18 it says it's not good for man to be alone. And I think before when I was thinking about this, I always thought about it like in a marriage. It's not good for a man to be alone. You need to find a spouse, blah blah blah. But I think it's even more than that. I think it's not just marriage, but it's like community and belonging and just real presence and connection that we really crave. Which brings me to my next point. God's design really is for real life connection. God consistently works through like sitting around tables, people walking together, going on journeys together, traveling together, sharing meals together, community, not isolation. Jesus himself called people by name. He ate with them. He walked with them. He did ministry with them. He always did it with other people. And he would even call out the people that didn't even feel worthy to be called out. Hey, Zacchaeus, come down here. Hey, get up off the floor, stop washing my feet, come be part of this conversation. He was always calling people into community. I think the point is like authentic connection happens when we just show up as who we are. We just show up in our regular life, being our regular self, doing our regular things, not as we do on a profile. When I was doing the online dating, which was a very short time, but when I was doing that, my daughter was helping me set everything up and, pick out my pictures and decide what I wanted to share and what I thought was important and what kind of things I wanted to see in a potential partner, but also, the things that I enjoyed doing and, the things that I wanted them to be like-minded on and all that. And, that's a pretty hefty list, from anybody, not just from me, from anybody. And a lot of times, we put something out there that may or may not be who we really are. I know I tried to put some pictures on there of hiking and things like that, things that I enjoyed doing. But my first instinct was just to put my pictures like I do, on my Instagram or whatever. And it was like, no filters. People don't want to see you with filters. I was like, oh, okay. So at least that part of it was pretty authentic. But wouldn't it be so much more fun, so much more like pressure off just to meet someone in your day-to-day life? Well, you're just doing the things that you do and you just look the way that you look and you're not necessarily out there looking for someone to go on a date with. You're just living life, doing your thing. I feel like that is something that we could really wrap our minds around and something that a lot of us, I know I can't be the only one, really crave something like that, just that real connection. Even when you look back at like the people from, I don't know, 50 years ago, maybe even when I was a kid, right? There was no online, there was no any of that. It was just, some guy comes over, he asks you to go out, you say yes or no. And you had to take that time to be brave and make those connections and, see, is this really a person I'd want to go get a coffee with, go get a drink with, go take a walk with, that sort of thing. A few years ago, I was talking to a guy I had gone to school with. We had been friends when we were in high school, and we just started talking and kind of hit it off, and we're bantering back and forth. And he was going to be coming through. He was on his way to see a friend in Florida. And so I was like, yeah, come through here. Let's meet up and stuff. So we meet up together, and it was just the funniest thing because as soon as he got here, this girl came up to us and we were like, she took us on this wild goose chase. Anyway, she was like, I'm pregnant and I need help and da da da. I haven't seen this guy in like over 20 years. And I'm like, get in the car. Let's take this girl and let's try that. Anyway, it was like this long, drawn out thing. And we're running all over. And the more that we're talking to her, the more we're realizing that her story is not true at all. And so we finally, help her do her thing, get her where she needs to be. And then we were just laughing our butts off. It was so funny because we're like comparing stories and we're like, yeah, when did you pick up that this wasn't true, that wasn't true? And it was just a lot of fun. We weren't like, hey, let's go out, let's connect or anything. We were just making a real life connection. And one thing led to another thing. And it was just a bunch of hysterical fun. So the next thing I want to think about is, when Valentine's Day is coming up and we're like, ugh, instead of looking at it like, yay or ugh, what if we looked at it like kind of like a heart check, not a deadline, not like, oh, I have to have a date by this day, but just a heart check, where we could like really maybe reframe it or look at it in a different way. And, it's not like a scoreboard. Did you have a date? Did you not have a date? It's not proof of success or failure or, your worthiness or not worthiness or your like prettiness or not prettiness. What if we looked at it more? We just kind of reflected on it. What if we're like, okay, where am I longing for connection? Am I open? Have I gone into my self-protective mode? Am I putting my little turtle shell on and going in my turtle shell every time, I have a chance to meet somebody? Or am I honestly open to making connections? And, just if we really encouraged ourselves to be honest with ourselves and with God, I mean, God knows already, right? But a lot of times maybe we don't know, or we do know, but we won't want to even talk about it, right? So, God can handle our disappointment, our hope, our longing, our fear. He can fill those needs for us that we have. But I think it's important for us to use it as a heart check and say, okay, so what is this all about? Is it just because I feel this pressure and these people around me and everybody's telling me I should be in love and be doing these things on Valentine's Day? Or is there something there underneath that, yeah, this is something I want to be moving toward? The past probably 5 or 10 years, I've done like a Galentine's party every year. And we started out, my friend Luana and I did it for just single gals. We're like, okay, let's do this thing that makes people feel included and part of a community and fun and loved. And you can celebrate and you don't have to worry about having a date or anything like that. Well, since then, I've done it every year since then, even with people that are married and people that are single. I usually the past few years, I've done it as part of my oily community and just a real fun night to celebrate and just celebrate friendships and celebrate love and celebrate, loving yourself and self-care and all that kind of thing. Because usually we'll make something kind of fun, something oily and fun. And then we'll have dinner and we'll hang out. We'll maybe play games or, just a really enjoyable time. But what if it didn't have to be Valentine's Day to do something like that? What if like authentic connection could happen any day? Like it could happen today. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in April. It could happen in July. So what can that look like for us right now? Here are a few things that we could just think about, just practical and like just encouraging ways that things that we can say yes to. We could say yes to having coffee with a friend. It doesn't have to be a boyfriend. It doesn't have to be someone we're interested in. It could just be a friend. It could be joining in the like small groups at church, getting involved, talking to people we normally wouldn't talk to. It can be serving with someone else, doing something together, through your church, through your community, through your women's group, through your whatever it may be, right? It could be, I love this idea, and I've been talking about this for a long time, and you guys will have to hold me accountable on this, is now they have walking groups, they have running groups, that get together. They have book clubs, they have volunteering, things like that where you're really going to meet real people and make real connections. I'm a part of a book club I really like. Of course, it's all ladies in the book club, but I read books that I never would read on my own because usually I'm reading something to learn something for business or to do this particular thing or that particular thing. And these are just fun fiction books. And like I said, they're not anything I would have picked up on my own. And I'm really, really enjoying that. We want to be present. We want to put our phone down. That's a big one. How are you going to meet people in the real world if your head's down in that phone all the time? If you're constantly looking on there for your people and your connections and you're just to feel like validated or whatever. Think about when you're in a store. Are you looking down at your phone while you're in line to check out? Or are you making eye contact with someone? I do that at the gym all the time. I'll have my phone with me while I'm working out. And a couple of times I've gone in there and I said, you know what? I am not going to look down at this phone. I am going to look around at the people around me. And it makes such a big difference when you're in there. Because even if you're like, hey, you're just sweating, they're sweating, it's like more connecting when you do it that way. And, we can allow ourselves to just talk to people and have conversations, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be curated like it is on, social media or on a dating app or something like that. You're just talking, being yourself. One day I was at the gym and I saw this guy and he looked kind of familiar. And I was like, oh, I must know him from my job because I'll see people all the time in my job and then I'll see them somewhere else. And I was like, where do I know them from? Anyway, he acted like he knew me. And so I was like, hey, and then pretty soon he came over and he started talking to me and I was like, I do not know this person at all. But instead of feeling like, oh, this is awkward, this is bad, I was like, no, this is just a nice guy, right? And so he was telling me what job he did. And I was telling him what I did. And we talked about when we normally came to the gym and that sort of thing. So it was just real life connection. We want to be, willing to say yes. We want to be present and we want to trust God, right? We want to trust God that often he's going to use ordinary moments to create like meaningful relationships, whether that's with a new friend, whether that's with a potential partner, whether that's with just a person that needs a listening ear, right? Someone that we can connect with and we can, share our love and our wisdom and our, even silliness, right? I talk to people every day at work and they're scared. They got stuff going on. They got serious stuff going on, but it's so fun to talk with them and connect to them and listen to their stories and all that. In Proverbs 18:24, it says, a man who has friends must show himself friendly. And then I think about my favorite movie, at the end of It's a Wonderful Life. What was it that the angel said? He said, a man that has friends is rich, basically. That's my version of it, right? A man who has friends is rich. And so I want us to think about it that way. A woman that has connections is rich. And think about all that rich entails. It's money and it's peace and it's all the things. Think about that when you are, going out and making those real authentic connections. And then also just think it, overall, just think about it like this is just a holiday. This is just a holiday that's coming up. We can like it, we can lump it, right? We can, talk to each other. We can talk directly to our single hearts and just remind ourselves like, you're not too late. You're not forgotten. You're not invisible. You don't have to have a spouse or a partner or someone to have some worthiness or validation or any of that stuff. The truth really with Valentine's Day is, love is so much bigger than romance and connection is so much more than even dating or, finding a spouse or finding a partner, right? God's timing is personal and it's intentional. And, we just want to really have that hope that the real thing, the thing that we really want, it's worth waiting for and it's worth practicing now. And the more that we're giving our love away, the more love we're going to get back in all shapes and forms, right? Okay, my Taken Back Happy friends, if this holiday or this season has stirred something in you, kind of like a longing you just can't quite name, maybe a tenderness that you feel in your heart, you kind of trying to tuck down or put away, I just want you to know this, like nothing about your heart is wrong. The ache isn't like proof that you're like behind or you're missing out on something. It's just evidence that you really were made for something real. You really are made for connection and connection with other people. And just because there's this particular holiday with its cards and its roses and chocolates and noise and flowers and all the things, we don't have to get all caught up in all that, right? We're not in a rush to get into a relationship. We're not in a rush to define ourselves based on that. God is never late. God always has a great plan for our lives. And like I said, we can find joy in just the ordinary places, in those conversations where we linger a little longer, in those tables that we sit around, those walks that we take with friends, those walks we take with new friends, those conversations we have in the line at the grocery store, all those things. So maybe this Valentine's Day isn't asking you to have it all figured out or, inviting you to try to figure, this whole deal out or whatever. Maybe it's just a time to, follow that ache in your heart to connect with other people. You're not forgotten. You're not unseen. Your story is still unfolding before you. And at the right time, it's all going to come together. So my Taking Back Happy friends, stay the line. Enjoy your life where it is today. That's what I'm going to be doing. We could share our funny stories. There probably will be some funny stories revolving around Valentine's Day, right? And just remember, go ahead and get connected in the Facebook group. That is a great place to connect with other women who are taking back their own happy. Join me for the Taking Back Happy workshop and get in there in a small group where we do a small group Zoom and meet with other people. And, you learn some things and you do all that, but you also make real authentic connections. Hop on into that TVH Insider where you get on those emails and do that kind of connection. All those things are possibilities for us to connect with other women who are taking back their own happy. And happy Valentine's Day, my friends. If this podcast blessed and encouraged you today, I'd love for you to share it with your friends. You can take a screenshot and share it in your stories, but make sure you tag me at Gina Granville so we can connect. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you join my Taking Back Happy Facebook group. I'll meet you back here soon, and we'll continue taking back happy together.